king is allegedly set to use the soft power of the crown to woo over Donald Trump and help smooth relations between the Prime Minister and the President-elect.
Well, despite disagreement over issues like climate change, there are lots more issues, I think, to disagree over. It is said that Donald Trump really does have a deep affection for the royals, recently on display during a behind-the-scenes look at his campaign. This is fascinating. Watch this.
This is with Queen Elizabeth. Right here, who was fantastic, by the way. These images, I mean, who has images like this? And these were relationships, too. Look, here's now the king. Here's Charles with the guard. And this is the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. It's a piece of history at the highest level. Look, it's Charles. So beautiful. And they'll see the most beautiful places in the world. There are no places like this.
Of all the places he must have been and the world leaders he must have met, he's still clearly very, very impressed with the royal family.
Well, it's quite nice, I think, that he clearly sees them as having a position above his.
Yes.
Which they do in the sense that, you know, they'll obviously outlast his time in office. So that's quite nice, actually, I think. But anyway, let's talk to political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. Morning, Kevin. I mean, look, it's pretty clear, isn't it, that the special relationship, it's not going to disappear, but maybe it is going to take a few knocks.
Yeah, it's not going to vanish, Stephen. You're right. You got to remember as well. Obviously, President Trump's mother is Scottish. There is a familial link there for Donald Trump with Great Britain. It's not going to vanish, as I say. However, it is going to be quite rocky, I think. Obviously, we've heard a lot of warm words so far from Keir Starmer. But it's not so long ago that the Republican Party and the Trump campaign were accusing Labour of election interference during the campaign. We know what David Lammy and other members of the cabinet said about Donald Trump when he was president the last time. So these things can't be unsaid. So it's not going to be plain sailing. Obviously, they don't see eye to eye. You mentioned climate change. There's also concerns about Trump looking to put tariffs on imports into the United States. There's obviously the question of the Ukraine war and what Donald Trump's attitude to that will be. So, yeah, there are problems ahead, but the special relationship will endure.
Keir Starmer is clearly thinking ahead, ignoring Nigel Farage's offer to help ameliorate things, and going for, instead, the royal family. It's quite a clever move, isn't it, really? Because you can see a state visit happening pretty soon.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we had one the last time, but you saw from that video clip there as well how much Donald Trump admires the royal family. He likes being flattered, and there's no greater flattery, really, than a state visit. He loves all the pomp and ceremony. He'd really get a kick out of meeting King Charles again, I'm sure. And Labour and the government will be using all the soft power, all the leverage at its disposal to try and make sure that relations with the White House are as good as possible.
I was intrigued as to whether there would be the same affection for the king as Trump had for the Queen. Because obviously it is different. It's going to be a different relationship. But you got the impression from that clip that he does hold, because he is the king, he does hold him in very high regard.
Yeah, well, you know, he does like powerful men, and obviously the king, he's the head of state, so he is a powerful man. Obviously, he's not a politician. He doesn't set the laws of this country, quite rightly. However, Donald Trump does admire powerful men, so there's no doubt at all that he would, as I say, get a bit of a kick out of meeting him. He'll hold King Charles in quite a lot of high regard, and if there's one way to ensure that you get Donald Trump on side, is to appeal to his ego. And I think laying on a state visit, all the pomp and ceremony that goes with it, there's no doubt at all that would be a good thing as far as Britain is concerned. However, what you can't get away from is the pure raw politics of the situation. And there are going to be numerous occasions, I'm sure, over the next 4 years where things will be difficult. I mean, Theresa May experienced it the first time around with Donald Trump. It was slightly better with Boris Johnson. I think there was more of a connection there between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. And Keir Starmer has to hope that he can establish that same type of rapport with Trump once he gets into the White House.
Whatever one thinks of Trump's politics, the fact is that he is now an experienced politician, isn't he? I mean, he's been in power more than Keir Starmer has. And these politicians, whilst they'll say one thing from the podium and in reports and maybe even in Parliament, but they're very different when they meet themselves, aren't they? They're much more pragmatic and realistic.
Absolutely. You know, well, we know that Donald Trump, it's all about doing deals, isn't it? And at the end of the day, what's best for America is what Donald Trump wants from any relationship he has with other nations, just like Keir Starmer will want what's best for the United Kingdom. But, you know, personal relationships are very important. We've heard Keir Starmer talk an awful lot over the last few days about having dinner with Donald Trump in New York in September and how well that went. We had the phone call shortly after Donald Trump was elected. It was quite noticeable, the language that Number 10 used, talking about hearty congratulations and how they recalled fondly the meal that they had in Trump Tower a couple of months ago. So again, it's all about trying to make sure that they put aside all the difficulties and political differences there are obviously between a Labour government, a left of centre Labour government, and a fairly right-wing Trump administration in Washington. So, you know, they have to try and steer a very difficult course, I think, between them to try and get past those difficulties and focus on where they agree on things like the economy, Ukraine, or potentially try to agree anyway in those areas. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how those personal relationships unfold over the next 4 years.
Can we talk about Farage? Because I think this is fascinating, isn't it? He's in a position where he is incredibly strengthened and bolstered by this result, isn't he? Because whether Keir Starmer likes it or not, he is a gateway figure, but he's also someone who holds similar policies in many respects to Trump. And if Trump can make it work, then that's all power to Nigel's elbow, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was quite mischievous, really, for Nigel Farage to offer to be this bridge between the United Kingdom and America. I'm not surprised that Keir Starmer declined that offer. But you're right, there's no doubt that Nigel Farage is friends with Donald Trump. He is a political kindred spirit with Donald Trump as well. And you've got to remember, in a lot of seats that Labour won at the general election, Reform came second. So you're right, they'll be nipping away at Labour's heels come the next general election in a lot of those seats. And if Donald Trump can be shown to be successful as a sort of anti-establishment figure over his second term in office, then obviously you're right, that does bolster Nigel Farage's message to say, well, look, Reform UK can be that sort of anti-establishment vote. If you're fed up with the two-party system in the United Kingdom, you're fed up with Labour, you're fed up with the Tories, you know, why not give us a go? You've seen it work in America, we can make it work here. So yeah, it does undoubtedly strengthen Nigel Farage. That being said, though, you can forget any chance of him becoming US ambassador, UK ambassador in Washington, or any informal bridge between the UK and Washington, because the last thing that Keir Starmer wants to do is bolster Nigel Farage any further.
Must have stuck in the craw then for Keir Starmer to hear that the one British politician that Donald Trump named in that speech was Nigel Farage. In fact, the only foreign politician at all he named.
Yeah, I think Nigel Farage was in the crowd, wasn't he? There, wearing his MAGA hat and waving it above his head. I seem to remember when Donald Trump mentioned him in the speech. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no doubt that they do have a rapport. He's been over there a lot. He went over after the assassination attempt in July as well, obviously. So yeah, Nigel Farage will be milking this relationship for all it's worth, and undoubtedly be looking to take political advantage of it come the next election here.